And I'm Sean Pendergast. He is Seth Payne. How was your weekend?
It was great. We were out here Saturday on a very rainy morning to watch a practice where it was competitive, but not. It was kind of sloppy. C.J. Stroud had his foot stepped on by Foley Fatukasi, which was a little bit scary because he was hobbled afterwards, limping around a little bit. But then I would say the final series the offense had, they probably looked the best they had all day, CJ himself included.
Yeah.
So nobody's overly worried about it, but on these sloppy days, the defensive linemen wear their 7 studs instead of their molded cleats. They're wearing their spikes.
Do those hurt more when you
It
get
hurts
stepped
a
on?
lot more.
Okay.
A lot more.
Okay. Why are they 7 studs? What are they? Is that like the length of them or something like that? Or
8 is gauche.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
I don't know. That's a good question, Sean. What are you, a 4-year-old? Asking me why the sky is blue? It just is, damn it.
Where do babies come from, Seth?
Because there's 2 on the heel.
Okay.
And then 5 in the front.
Oh,
That's
okay,
why,
so there's
Sean.
7. Okay, I didn't
It just
know.
kind of spaces out that way.
Gotcha.
The linemen, you like wearing the moldeds because it's more cushiony.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just more comfortable. But there's times you got it. And I didn't see if Foley was wearing the 7 studs or not. But if he was, that's when it really hurts.
I don't know what he was wearing, but I know he's 300+ pounds, and that would hurt if he stepped on your. If he stepped on your foot wearing Hey Dudes,
right.
it would hurt because he's 300 pounds.
On a team full of large human beings, Foley Fatukasi is one of the largest.
He is one of the biggest.
And at least among, who's not a fat O lineman.
All right, so are we taking attendance then today with CJ to make sure he's out here in his red jersey and his pads ready to go?
If he's not out here, I'll tell you one thing I won't be doing.
Yeah.
I won't be Joe Espada-ing this thing.
No.
I won't be like, well, yeah, he's fine. Don't worry about the quarterback. Needed a rest day. Quarterbacks don't need rest days.
No.
So, yes, D'Amico was very dismissive of it afterwards.
Yep.
Kind of playfully so. He had a good time with it. But I think the fact that it hurts, man. When you get, and it happens a lot, like with the linemen. So it's unlikely that it's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of my fellow defensive linemen used to get angry at me because I liked wearing the 7 studs just because I was Joe Turbo and wanted to always have an advantage no matter where we were.
For sure.
I just didn't want to slip one little bit anywhere.
Yep.
But I would, you step on guys' feet a lot.
Yeah.
You get angry.
Yep. That happened on Saturday, but it looked like, you're right, it looked like by the end CJ was fine. I was watching him after he got stepped on, just even when he was off to the side, and he was still doing some of that thing where you kind of hop up and down a little bit to make sure it's okay. He was doing quite a bit of that, but it looks like he's going to be fine. As you pointed out, D'Amico dismissed it. So what are the themes so far, man? Because this is the first time we've been back on since talking about a practice since like Thursday, because we didn't, the practice took place after our show Friday, and we had a whole nother practice on Saturday.
I know how the clock works, Sean, and the calendar.
Yep.
So right, Friday though they've had 2 practices since we were on the air on Friday.
Yep.
That I'd say the offensive line took one on the chin. Sorry, there's water dripping down onto my phone. So the offensive line took one on the chin on Friday and Saturday. Saturday especially when the first team offense tried to run to the left. Where, remember, you've got Blake Fisher filling in with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. You've got Kenyon Green at left guard. Then you've got Drew Scruggs at center. They couldn't get out of the backfield. The offense couldn't. Now, the big thing, and where I'm trying to take everything with a grain of salt, is that this defensive line for the Texans is hyper-aggressive. It looked like, and sometimes in practice that can be a little unfair. It's hard for me to admit that as a defensive guy. So Bobby Slowick, through the course of that practice, I think he started to resort to some trickery. So I think some things to try to take advantage of the hyper-aggression by the Texans defense with some success. It was a Tank Dell that hit that end around.
Yes.
So, when your defensive end isn't paying attention to his responsibilities and he's just hell-bent for leather into the backfield, that's when you can get him with an end around, and they did. So I'm still pleased with the progress the offensive line has made, but they are facing a hyper-competitive bunch of really good football players over there on the defense, and it hasn't looked great at times. But I want to see them out there versus actual competition that has to play it honestly.
Well, and your biggest concern with this team, but certainly on offense, was the interior of the offensive line, and that's the area right now on this offensive line where they've actually, the first unit has been trotting out the guys who presumably, if they had to play week 1 next week, would be the guys. Kenyon Green, Drew Scruggs, and Shaq Mason. Now, Shaq Shaq has not been out there full time. He's an older guy, so he's ceded some reps to is it Jaden or Jalen Thomas at number 72? He's gotten in there with the first stringers a few times.
Kendrick Green has gone over there at times.
Yeah. So there's been a little bit of shuffling, but what I was going to say was the interior of the offensive line. I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday. There was one of those 2 days where it was kind of leaky in there on the inside. I mean, there's a reason C.J. Stroud got stepped on by Foley Fatukasi. He was in the backfield in 2 seconds.
And look, as of right now, just based on the first week and a half of practice that we've watched, they're experimenting, or they're at least considering having Blake Fisher be the swing tackle, be that first guy in. And look, he's no George Fant. George Fant ain't walking through that door. Got himself a nice contract with the Seahawks after. My voice, I'm going through puberty again, Sean. My voice cracked.
Fant gets you excited.
George Fant. That's what I'm into. George Fant. Now, this is important to remember. George Fant looked horrendous during training camp last year. I was very nervous about George Fant going into the season, and it turned out he was just shaking out the cobwebs because he ended up playing pretty damn well as the swing tackle when he had to play at right tackle. So Blake Fisher is a work in progress. And I would say that's what I feel about a lot of these offensive linemen at this point. Some of the errors have been mental, which theoretically is correctable. They just got to get their assignments and how they pick up blitzes and stunts down a little bit better. But I do think that Blake Fisher has 100%. He has the physical ability to do it.
Oh yeah.
He's just got some rookie glitches that he's got to learn. And it is one advantage of D'Amico and Bobby Slowick stressing real competition as much as they do, is that he's getting plenty of on-the-job experience.
If this were a prize fight and we're 8 rounds in, because we've had 8 practices so far. Actually, you know what? Let's just use the padded practices.
8 or 7.
This is day 9. So we've had 8 practices. So there's been half of them, I think since the fans got here, they've all been padded practices. So we've had 4 of those. If it were a prize fight, who's winning right now, the offense or the defense?
I'd say the defense.
I think so, too.
And I think that this is it's not unexpected just because the style of defense that the Texans play, where they're very, very aggressive up front, they keep it relatively simple on the back end, and they've added some really good players where the offense, they can't really come firing off the ball. I was talking to Sarge about this. I feel like Sarge may have talked to an offensive person who really gave him the old O-line propaganda, which is true and accurate, that you can't, as an offensive lineman, you can't do everything that you would in a game, especially cut blocking. But as a defensive lineman, I would say, go die. No, that's just a stupid excuse.
Okay. So you're spreading the truth, not propaganda about the defensive line.
Sure. But Sarge made a good point. I'm glad he talked to me about it because I think you're kind of in wait-and-see mode, and I got to take a little bit of a baseball spring training approach where don't worry as much about the results right now. I think the one thing I would caution people against is when you watch one-on-ones between the wide receivers and defensive backs on social media, just know that drill is heavily slanted in favor of the offense. You've got a defensive back on an island, no help or support from any safeties or anybody else. There's no pass rush. There's no obstructions in the passing lanes. Guys are hitting double moves. So just because you see, for instance, Jalen Petrie get dusted by Tank Dell, that doesn't mean that that's how it looks all the time for Jalen Petrie.
Better not.
But I think they are. I think they are really challenging Jalen Petrie.
Yeah.
And working into this slot position, they've got him up on the line a lot. And I think they're saying, look, go ahead and do it versus Tank Dell, do it versus Stephon Diggs, do it versus Nico Collins, and then you can kind of hit the easy button at times once we give you a little bit more help, both with coverage and game planning and everything else like that.
No doubt.
But what that also does, it does give you the opportunity with Jalen Petrie to blitz. And when he's already naturally up at the line of scrimmage, man, that blitz from a slot corner, when it's well disguised, can be lethal.
He's good at it, too.
Yeah. So I'm kind of excited for the upside of that, but I'm going to be nervous about the downside until we see him in games.